think that's great. I think, oh, sorry. I think that's great. I think that a lot of families don't know that that's a resource. So they'll typically come to the foundation first, and then we come to you guys. But I do think there's so much value in being able to sit down and talk to someone who's working to create a therapeutic treatment for your child, right? Because I know, as for me, I'm lucky now because of the role I'm in. I get to talk with you guys all the time and help understand this process much better. But a lot of families have no clue what all, like what the process is. So we'll make sure to put everyone's contact information up somewhere. So if families are interested in asking questions, we'll make sure to get that to you all. So Danielle, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think everyone summed it up really great, but just again, your voices are so powerful, and we really can't move forward unless you really instruct us how to do better for your community. And I think not just to pharmaceutical, but to the FDA, to Capitol Hill, your voices do really mean something, and it helps us not only change our company for the better, but it helps us change the future for the better. So don't be afraid to share your voices.
Absolutely. So I know one of the big questions that I think that we get a lot of time is trying to understand the whole idea of the drug development process. And so I'm curious if you guys could share anything with our families about this process from your perspective of getting a drug from like preclinical to the end, with providing some hope, right? That not that it takes forever, but providing some excitement. What would you want our families to know? Whoever wants to go first.
It's a roller coaster ride.
Yeah. The roller coaster.
I think that it's a roller coaster ride. Yeah. It is unfortunately many years long, and for the actual trial, but there's probably many years that have gone before that. So, one of the challenges we have in rare disease is we don't understand these diseases very well. And so we're looking for people who are maybe at University of Alabama that have decided to study angelman in a mouse model. So it's starting in those small places and understanding the actual, as much as we can, about the actual disease, and then thinking about what type of therapy. Angelman, as all of you know, has many different manifestations. What are those symptoms that your children live with that are most important, that you would want most changed, that you would want something developed? And until we understand that, that's really the first step. The first step is understanding what would good look like for all of you, and how do we then go about creating something and developing something.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I can tell you I'd like to sleep more. So I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Sophia.
No, I got so excited by what Jessica was saying too, just because I think it goes back to the idea that any of the smallest of things to the largest of things, like James, that ripple, we need to learn from you. I mean, that's what it is. You all are our teachers through this. And I think even though the patient voices haven't been as incorporated as they should have been throughout the entire existence of our industry, I think rare is the best example of how it should be done, because you all are so giving of your time and your stories and your authenticness, right? Like that's the only way that we can make progress. So I don't know if that was answering any of the question, but
no, I think it's good. I think that I think there's a lot of and from my opinion, for me myself, there's a lot of just misunderstanding about the drug development process and how all this looks. And as a parent, like when you hear that there's someone who is, in preclinical, I know for me, I get super excited because I'm like, oh, let's do this, but forgetting that there's a process to it. But it's important to have that process because it's all about safety, right? And then finding the right drug to be able to make a therapeutic impact for our sweet individuals with Angelman syndrome. So James, Danielle, what would you guys say you would want to share with families about the drug development process?
do you want to go first or you want me?
Danielle, no, you shoot, Danielle.
Yeah, I think Sophia and Jessica said really great points. I think another thing just for me, just from my sense is for the community to really just educate yourself on the drug development process and really what it goes into, what a clinical trial means, what questions you should be asking, because I think that's something like as we do develop drug development, we want the patients in our trials to understand what they're signing up for, what those expectations look like, because I think sometimes that reality of, people forget, they get so caught up in that clinical trial and in that hope of what they forget that sometimes a treatment might not work out. They might not get into a clinical trial. They might, not see the result they expected. So I think, again, when families and patients have a better understanding of that in education, it really helps change that perspective moving forward of the drug development process too.
I think the one thing that people don't understand, after a clinical trial, you have to then put all of this information into a very large document. So I know sometimes that seems like, oh, you're putting together, how hard can that be? But I can just tell you, on a drug that we had developed 2 years ago, the document that we filed with the FDA for them to consider approving was 650,000 pages long, with
my God.
1 million hyperlinks in that document.
Yeah.
So the trial is one piece of a very complicated puzzle. It's a really important piece, but there are many, many other hurdles after we get through the clinical development stage. Then we have to meet with regulators who have to analyze all of the data and say, has this met the mark of showing that it's effective? And is it safe? And what's the dosing? And all of those kinds of things. And something approved here in the US doesn't mean that it's going to be approved in Europe, doesn't mean that it's going to be approved in Japan. There's a whole separate process that happens. And sometimes their requirements are different than they are here in the US. So there's a lot of complexity. We talk about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials. That's a big piece of it. But there's a whole continuum of kind of hurdles and things that we have to go through in order for you to be able to go to your physician's office and say, hey, is my child eligible for this new drug? To get from here to there is a long journey.
Yeah. So, and I think to add to that, Amanda, I would also say that there's we all work with finite resources, and that means that we will, as clinical development groups, making decisions that will give our candidate drug the best opportunity to shine.
Sure.
And sometimes that may mean that a particular eligibility criteria means that one family's child isn't eligible, and those can be quite difficult conversations, but it's done so that we can then progress the drug further, to look at, in a broader community perspective, its effects, and to, as I say, to give the drug the best chance possible of being made available to the widest group possible. And so early in the development phase, there's often narrow inclusion-exclusion criteria, and we've had some difficult conversations with families to say, I'm sorry, but your child won't be eligible for these reasons. Or we're concentrating on a pediatric, and adult program will come later, and that's going to take some more time. It's just the nature of particularly small to mid-cap drug development.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think the exciting thing is that the space keeps growing. So we have a lot of shots on target. We have a lot of people working towards it. And even though it's going to take some time, I think it's the fact that we have so many of you all in the space now working for our individuals with Angelman syndrome, I think is, if at least from my perspective as a parent, gets me really, really excited. I understand it's going to take time, but just the fact that people are actually working on it now, it makes me makes me really excited.
And there's a collective knowledge that develops as well. the companies that are represented here as well will be able to recognize and share that knowledge to the betterment of the community as a whole, whether it be particular endpoints and how they've developed over time, to interactions with the FDA and educating the FDA on the decisions they should make.
I could talk to you guys for hours about all of this. We're getting into the endpoints and biomarkers and all that fun stuff that I'm sure we could talk about for a long time. But I'm curious, as we're getting close to our time, I'd love to hear from each of you. What excites you right now about working with the Angelman syndrome community? Out of all of your communities, because I know you guys don't just have us, but what excites you the most of working with Angelman syndrome community? Sophia, I'm going to put you on the spot first.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, this is the easiest. I mean, it's the people. I mean, all of y'all have always just been so welcoming. And I started at Ovid in March of 2020, and it was my first introduction to rare. And I have to say, selfishly, it's been the most amazing community to be welcomed into. So it's impossible not to be motivated and just jazzed to wake up and be able to work with such incredible people. And Amanda says that she calls us on a bi-weekly basis. I think sometimes I call her for, a pick me up too.
A daily basis.
It's a mutual love and knowledge share. So I mean, that's a no-brainer, and I'm sure everybody's gonna say the same.
I love it. Jessica?
So it's definitely the community. I mean, I think there in rare disease, like other diseases, there's certain levels of understanding and motivation. So there are some rare diseases where people are kind of happy with what their standard of care is today. And even though you might be developing a therapy, there's not a huge kind of groundswell to participate and get involved. And we have the antithesis of that in the Angelmans. And that's a good problem to have, that the level of interest, the excitement, the willingness to participate, the willingness to be open and really collaborative. That's not necessarily true in every community that I've worked in. So that is really what is the exciting part. And then the other exciting part is that, there's so many companies, and how do we leverage what we're doing collectively to bring about change? Not all of us will be successful in developing a therapy, but the kind of silver lining of that is that we will understand the disease better than we did 5 years ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that collective knowledge should be, benefiting everybody. Whether or not your child will have a therapy, we can't guarantee that, but I think the level of knowledge, the excitement, and people going into research in this is only growing. And that's really, 7,000 rare diseases. Not every disease in the rare space has this level of activity and engagement, not just from the community, but from pharmaceutical industry, from other stakeholders. So that's really the exciting part.
Yeah, I saw a statistic the other day. I think it was 51% of rare diseases actually have a patient advocacy organization supporting them. I mean, I just can't imagine that, right? So how over half of that 7,000 have no one even out there trying, creating standards of care, or family support, or research or anything. So I think this community does amaze me very much. So that's a good point. James, I'll go with you, and then we'll go with Danielle.
Thanks, Amanda. I'll probably just very quickly to add on to Jessica's points. I think the level of sophistication of families that come engaged and enthused and that contact me. I work across a number of different rare diseases, and the Angelman community is a very advanced community in terms of the networks, the support, the education that everybody has, and that makes our lives a lot easier as well. So I think it's a sophisticated audience that understands clinical trials and the process, and are asking of us, asking the right questions.
Yeah. Well, the good news is you'll have many more people contacting you after tonight. So
Fine by me.
right. And Danielle.
Yeah, no, I'm just super excited to kind of, be a part of this exciting time with this community. And I think having a community who's so supported and educated and connected really helps us get to that main goal a lot faster. And, I'm just really glad to be a part of it and look forward to, seeing a lot more doors get knocked down.
Awesome. You guys are amazing. So we're right at 30 minutes, but I'm going to ask if you could stay on for just a couple more minutes because we did have a couple questions I think would be good. Jessica, I'm going to point this one to you. We do have a lot of our international friends on the phone tonight. And of course we have our, this is a global disease and a global organization. Can you help families understand if a drug is approved in from your or company's perspective? So this is from Ultragenyx. When a drug is approved in the US, what is your kind of standard of operations of trying to get that drug approved in other countries?
So really good question, and kind of there's not a straightforward answer.
Right.
What I would say is that when you're looking at the regulatory environment, so that's the FDA, and there's a FDA equivalent in all of these other countries. And as I said earlier, they all have they view things through different lenses. So an endpoint may pass in the US, but the trial that you have to do in Europe may have some different endpoints because that's how they've interpreted what they'd like to see in the trial for the evidence that you develop. And so you look at really kind of the world map. I would tell you honestly that the US and Canada are probably the #1 markets that companies start with, and then they go from there. So US-based companies really start, the US is the largest marketplace because of the way our healthcare system works, the size of the country, all of that tends to be the #1 marketplace for US companies and others. Then Europe generally is second. And when I say Europe, often Western Europe, we want to call them the big five, Spain, England, France, Italy, and Germany. And then you look at what else is available. Is there an infrastructure to be able, if you have a complicated therapy, is there an infrastructure that people would be able to access this? Would they have to travel? And what kind of healthcare system? Who, in many countries outside of the US, it's a single payer healthcare system. So
Right.
They're balancing all of the other health issues to say, how do we cover this? What are the criteria that we're going to create in order for people to have access? So it's really through that lens, and it happens in some ways in a stepwise fashion. It's not, say, the drug was approved on June 1st, 2025 in the US. It could be a year, it could be 2 years later that you might have it approved in Germany. And so it's not all systems go right out of the gates. And again, there may be some countries that won't approve it. And that's where we then try to provide compassionate use and look at other ways in which people can access the medications.
So you talked about access. So how important is it for like the Angelman clinics across the world? Is that part of the access? If there's Angelman clinics or clinicians based in all these places to be able to give these?
Absolutely.
Possibly invade. Okay, good.
Absolutely. Good. Absolutely. No question about it. Because you're really, if you think about in the early days of HIV, and we knew in sub-Saharan Africa that was the epicenter of that, there was very little infrastructure to provide care. And so there was a lot of investment built to create centers of excellence where people could go and actually access care. The good news is in Angelman's, because you've built that network and there are specialty clinics and experts across the world, they will be champions in their countries for this. So yeah, that is only to the community's advantage.
We need to get more of those global clinics. So if anybody's listening online that's from somewhere outside of the US, let me know. Let's work on getting a clinic in your area. Right? That's what we like to do here at the foundation, is get those clinics open. So, well, I appreciate it, because that's a question that comes up a lot, because like I said, this is a global organization. I don't know if anybody else wanted to add anything to that. No pressure, because that wasn't a question we were planning on. But I think that that's something that a lot of our families are concerned about. And I think they're also really concerned about cost. And so I think that it'll be interesting. I'm not going to put anyone on the spot on the cost of your particular drug, but I think it will be really interesting of what that looks like, and how, as we get closer to the possibility of having a drug that passes through FDA, helping educate the community on access, because that's something that's really important, at least, from the Angelman Syndrome Foundation's perspective. If someone wants that drug, we want to make sure that they get access to that drug, and not have any kind of barriers to that. So like I said, I won't put anyone on the spot about access to it, but if you guys would like to provide all of that to free to the families, I would really appreciate it. No? I like all the laughs. And it's quiet. I love it.
No, I'm gonna put in at Ultragenyx, we provide product and bridge somebody until we can get payment. So nobody at Ultragenyx that is on an Ultragenyx therapy is gonna go without product if they're medically appropriate for it. And we will bridge somebody until we can find payment. So that's just, if you're in the rare disease space, and somebody needs a particular therapy that we've had approved, we'll get it to that person.
Well, and I think also I know the organizations, I know we just started a partnership with the assistance fund, because I think that's one thing that's really important as well. The assistant fund sets up funds for people to get access to therapeutic treatments or to drugs or whatever. So that's something that I know the foundations are really looking at now to help prepare that for the long run, to be able to support families as we move forward. So I know I've gone way over, but I could keep asking you all each fun questions, because you guys are amazing. Like I said, I'm so thankful to have each one of you here with me tonight. And thank you for taking the time. Thank you for everyone that has come on. I hope you've enjoyed all things AS with Amanda. I don't remember what is next month, but I'm sure it's exciting. So I hope you'll join us back. We will make sure, I think I see in the chat box, we have a couple of the patient advocacy groups emails on here, as far as like patients at Ionis and some other ones. We'll make sure to do our best to get contact information out to you guys if you have questions and want to reach out to any of these individuals. I can tell you I've worked with most of them, and they're incredibly lovely, and we'll spend time answering any questions that you have. So thank you guys so much. I'm sure this won't be the last time we're talking. I hope all of you will be coming to our August family conference, right? Yes, I hope to see you all there. It'll be great. We'll be getting a lot more updates from our industry partners, but you'll also have some time to hang out with some really awesome families and some really cool individuals with AS. So please come. We'd love to have you. So thank you all. We hope you have a wonderful night.
Thank you
for attending. Thank you,
Thank you
guys.
so much.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.